All right, he's here to help us get ready for the Masters. This guy knows more about Tiger Woods and Phil Mickelson than their caddies and their mommies and their daddies. His new book, Golf's Most Fascinating Rivalry, Tiger and Phil, is out April 26th. Sports Illustrated writer Bob Harig, thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me. Glad to do it. Thank you.
Bob, you're there at the Masters. Do people know that Tiger's going to play? I want to, start telling people. We got a little tip here at Extra Points if you want to start telling people.
Yeah, I don't know. I think the news leaked out a little bit here today. Yeah,
it did?
It's quite the story, isn't it?
It is amazing, and it's good for you in the book, right?
I don't think it hurts. Yeah, I don't think it hurts to have Tiger relevant. And listen, I'll be honest with you, when I was doing this, kind of finishing it up, trying to at the end of last year, I would have never dreamed that Tiger would be here this week. I mean, it's just doesn't, I don't know that I dreamed it 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
I just didn't think it was possible given what he's been through and, his own words and just knowing how hard it is to walk Augusta National.
Right.
It's hard for us mortals to walk the golf course and not feel winded and tired and sore. And now given what he's been through, it's even worse. So it's amazing that he's to this point and he's going to give it a go.
Yeah, I was just thinking as you were saying that, if 6 months ago you would have said, all right, give me odds that Tiger plays the Masters, but Mickelson doesn't, would have been pretty substantial, right?
No question. No question on that. Absolutely. I mean, that's the other part of the equation is Phil not being here and He's not injured. And, frankly, if he played anywhere like he did at the PGA last year that he won at age 50, he could have contended here. He's got as much course knowledge as Tiger when it comes to Augusta National. It doesn't require, experience matters. And it's stunning that he's not here, really.
You know what? There's a few hours remaining. Maybe he'll surprise you like Tiger did. No one expected him to. Maybe he'll jump in there. All will be forgiven. But anyway, you write about their rivalry. I love golf rivalries because there's nothing greater than the difference between, these guys acting super cool, passing each other and a pairing, knowing that they hate each other's guts. Maybe they don't hate each other's guts, but it must be fun to write about this, right? I think a lot of people hope that they hate each other, but it's not that intense, is it?
I don't think hate is the word, but there was definitely many times there was dislike, and there was certainly friction, tension between them. And today's players, a lot of them, they're buddies. They root for each other. Now they want to beat each other when they play, but they practice at home. They give each other tips. They work on their games together. And there is a camaraderie in golf where that does happen. But Tiger and Phil weren't doing that back in the day. I mean, they couldn't even do it when they were paired together as teammates on the U.S. Ryder Cup team way back in 2004. I mean, it just was, and certainly for Tiger, it was just not part of his mentality to let anybody get close. He stayed out of the locker room. He didn't really, cavort with other tour players that were, in his age group that were his competitors. He kind of hung around with older players that, he befriended guys who were more mentors. And so it makes sense that a guy who was obviously going to maybe make things difficult for him, he was not going to let him in.
Yeah, they have different backgrounds, right? They're both highly competitive. So that just right off the bat would create a natural rivalry. But there's any instances you could tell us about the mind games that were played and that we don't see in other sports?
Yeah, I mean, I think Tiger, whenever there was any kind of a little issue that came up with Phil, Tiger was not one to put it to bed. Mm-hmm. He didn't mind letting him squirm a little bit, which he felt made it easier on him. There was an instance way back where Phil made a kind of a cryptic comment that Tiger was playing with inferior equipment. Now that could have been taken a couple of different ways, and in a way, Phil actually meant it as a compliment. At the time in 2003, Tiger was not playing with the equipment available to him. In other words, he wasn't using the technology that was out there. That didn't necessarily mean the equipment itself wasn't any good. He just wasn't stepping up to what other guys were using. Now, why would he? He had won 8 majors through 2002. He was winning all the time. He liked playing with a shorter length driver, a smaller club head. It worked for him. Other guys had started to go to longer clubs, bigger club heads. And Phil, made the crack. He hates that I'm blowing it by him now. Well, a lot of people took that as a slam on Nike, which was Tiger's equipment company at the time. And it kind of turned into this thing, like, this little comment turned into a big deal. Tiger had to make a statement about it. Phil kind of had to walk it back. And Tiger really didn't mind the fact that Phil was suffering through a little bit of controversy there because of that, because anything that put the focus away from him and on Phil was good for Tiger.
And do you feel it'll be reciprocated? Do you think Phil is rooting for Tiger this weekend?
I actually think he is. And I don't think Tiger was not rooting for Phil at the PGA last year. I think they've come to a point in their careers where there's a lot more respect. They've mellowed, the perspective, age, maturity, all these things. Now, that doesn't mean that they don't want to beat each other's brains in if they get to play against each other. And I'm not so sure that Tiger's offering any olive branches to Phil right now over this whole controversy that he found himself in with the rival golf leagues. Tiger's clearly on the tour side of that thing. But, when it comes to competitiveness of it, I think Tiger appreciates the fact that what Phil did. And Phil has always been very, complimentary of Tiger during these comebacks. He did when he won the Masters. So I'm sure at home he looks at some of this has taken the sting away from Phil right now, which is probably a good thing for Phil.
Right. There's a story that Tiger and Tony Romo were playing together at Pebble Beach, and Romo was hanging out with Phil the night before, and Tiger found out and got really pissed off. Is there truth to this? I actually know the answer to this, but I'll let you.
I don't know if Tiger got pissed off so much as Phil didn't mind rubbing it in and letting it get under Tiger's skin. And they were paired together in the final round at Pebble Beach, where they have amateur partners, and Romo was Tiger's amateur partner. That was when he was playing for the Cowboys. And, Romo went to a dinner at Jim Nance's house the night before, and they sat near each other. And Romo kind of knew that he was sleeping with the enemy. He made a point to his wife, please don't tell Tiger about this. Well, Phil couldn't wait to let Tiger know. And he didn't tell him directly. He did it during the round and spoke loudly enough so Tiger would hear it. And Romo was just cringing, of course. So, whether it mattered or not, Phil shot 64 that day and won the tournament.
Yeah, so they're fueled by something. This is what bums me out, because I feel like you could write like 5 of these books, and certainly there's one for Bryson and Koepka down the road. It might, by the time you end up sitting down to write, it might be a true crime documentary, but who knows what happens there. But here's what bums me out, and I think it might bum you out. The match, the thing they do the day after Thanksgiving, they rotate the golfers through. I believe the first one was Tiger and Phil. Was that the first one? Tiger versus Phil?
Yes.
It's just a bummer because they're all nice to each other and they're telling jokes and they have to. And, like Phil's letting him pick up a putt from 6 feet away. It's like, all right, no, that's all right. We have that hole. That's fine. You can take it. Like, that kind of bums me out because I want to pretend I want the Santa Claus vision that these guys don't like each other. And then that happens.
10 years prior, that would have had far more effect.
Right.
Because there would have been true venom. And the other thing about that match is, obviously they dubbed it winner take all, $9 million. Let's be honest, Tiger was getting something. Yeah. He's not showing up for zero. He's not it wasn't going to be that intense. And that was during the period when their relationship had gotten better. And some of it was collaborative. Some of it was commercially oriented. They wanted to do things like that. They were supposed to do more of that, and it ended up sort of fizzling. They're still doing the matches, but Tiger's not been involved in them. Obviously, he wouldn't have been over the last year and a half. Right. But even before that, it looked like they had sort of moved on, and it was just Phil. And, obviously Bryson did one last summer, and the Koepka Bryson one. Be interesting to see how they carry that forth. I think the money's a fun way to do it, but as you said, there's they could always get anything sponsored, right? So they're getting something for it. How do we make sure that this money is leaving their checking accounts? Is there a way to do it, or is this always going to be bulletproof? Yeah, I have a story in the book back in the old days where actually they did play for money in a practice round, and Phil won $500 off of Phil. Or off a Tiger, on a Tuesday practice round. Look, for them, $500 is nothing, but it's still, nobody wants to have to fork it over. It's pride. And Tiger gave him the $500, and it was in $100 bills. And Phil was not satisfied enough to just have the bragging rights. And he took a photo of the $500 bills, and then he wrote a note to Tiger basically saying, "These Benjis are very happy in their new home, signed Phil." And then he put it in Tiger's locker. Nice. He just wanted to stick the needle in a little bit more. And whether it's a coincidence or not, but they did not play a practice round together for another 20 years.
Wow. Interesting.
From 1998 until 2018. Actually, at the Masters here, 2018, they played a practice round. It created more news than some of the tournament days. And that was the first time they had done it since then.
Nice. I don't believe in coincidences. I think you're onto something there.
It's possible.
Is he considered is Phil considered Tiger's biggest rival, or is it just history?
I mean, you can make the argument that Tiger had no rival. And I addressed that in there. I don't think you can shy away from the idea that, Tiger's record is so much better. Did he really have a rival? Was his rival history? Was his rival going after Jack's record? I think those are fair points to discuss, but there was nobody who was better than Phil in Tiger's era. Phil won of the 45 tournaments he's won. He won 36 of them in Tiger's era. He had won 9 before Tiger turned pro. I mean, there's nobody on tour today under the age of 50 other than Tiger who has 36 wins. In fact, nobody has even 25. Right. It's pretty good record that he won that many times. And 4 of his 6 majors were won with Tiger in the mix. Phil's record, if there was no Tiger, it's incredible, 45 wins. I mean, nobody's getting close to that, I don't think, ever going forward.
Yeah, I'm trying to think if they finished 1-2 and how many tournaments they might have.
Well, the telling thing was Tiger was number 1 for 600 some weeks, and Phil was number 2 to Tiger for like 270. And Phil never got to number 1.
That's 5 years, right?
Yep. Yep. Long time.
That's crazy. Back to the match play, the day after Thanksgiving, they call it the match, right? So I think we're up to number 6. Is there anyone you would like to see paired up based on rivalries? And, golfers could be anybody. Could be Trump and Kamala Harris, or Will Smith and Chris Rock. Anybody that you're like, oh boy, I would really tune in for that as I eat a leftover turkey sandwich.
Yeah, that's a good question. How about Will Smith and Chris Rock now sounds like a pretty good idea. I don't know if they're good enough golfers to carry it off.
Yeah, who cares?
The problem with all of that is we want them to entertain us too.
Right.
And
exactly.
Golf is too slow, I think, for that, especially match play.
Yeah.
The best drama is at a place like this where there's tons of people and lots of noise and cheering and all that. And, or where you see it in the Ryder Cup, frankly, that's where the greatest grudges occur in a Ryder Cup.
Mm-hmm. Tiger make the cut. I think it's minus 160. I don't know if you're a gambler or not, but shame on you if you're not. Does he make the cut?
I think he does. I do. I think he will. I mean, there's 90 players in the field, or 91 players in the field. There's probably 20 of them who are really not going to be competitive. You've got a bunch of past champions, some of whom are older. You've got several amateurs who have a harder time. So now that brings it down to about 70 guys, and 50 and ties make the cut.
Right.
So he's only got to beat 20, to make the cut. So I actually think the cut is very doable. Whether he can 10 is a whole nother story. Whether he can even, be there. I actually think it's a victory that he's just going to try, and anything beyond that's really great.
Sure. Yeah, he's actually minus 140. He's a growing favorite to make the cut. All right, give me a winner. I need it. Rahm favored 12-1. Wow, that even went down. Justin Thomas 13. Out of the top 5 or 6, who do you see emerging? Then maybe give me a mid-range if you like.
I like Justin Thomas a lot. I think this tournament is more suited to somebody who hasn't won recently. Guys, we put a lot of stock into form. Scotty Scheffler's won 3 times recently.
Right.
Obviously people are looking at him. I think it's hard to maintain that these days. I think a guy who's got a little hunger like JT hasn't won in over a year, but he finished 3rd a couple weeks ago, just missed a playoff. He played great at the Players during that horrible windy day. I think his game is pretty good. I think he's in good shape to contend. So I like him. Maybe a guy that's not being talked about is Bubba Watson.
Oh, yeah.
He's still got plenty of game. He hasn't won for a few years. He's won here twice. Loves the course. I think that matters. I think experience here has a lot to say about it. And when these guys come back, sometimes they're rejuvenated.
Is it bad I'm going down the list? I don't see. I know he's in this total 85-1. Okay. All right. So that's what we'll do. I'm going to put money on that. And we're partners if it wins. How about that? So now you got something to root for. Bubba Watson. Thanks so much. The book comes out April 26th, right? Golf's most fascinating rivalry.
Yes,
Tiger and Phil. Thanks so much, Bob Harig. It's going to be fun.
Appreciate you having me. Thank you. Have a great one.
All right. You too.